Evening, folks. Brian here. Brian who keeps on forgetting the date. February Saturday 10th. Saturday, February 10th. Hope you're all well. Obviously, I'm not. So we need to continue the talk on ultraviolet radiation. I'm going to start off on one subject. I'm going to work into something very highly controversial, and I have to speak in code. 10-4. So ultraviolet radiation is just another waveform of electromagnetic radiation originating from our sun. Perhaps a lot more detrimental than cosmic rays themselves. There's a number of adverse effects of ultraviolet radiation on the planet, biological life forms, plant life. So I found out about 6 years ago how the UV radiation sucks the moisture out of the soils where I grow my food, and out of the plant life themselves. And that's when I learned about the polycarbonate panels, the twin wall polycarbonate panels that are used in greenhouses. So I started building little housings over all my raised beds. And they work fantastically at protecting my vegetables and maintaining the moisture content in the soils after I water them. Because the plastic-based material polycarbonate panels deflects the ultraviolet radiations off my plants in the soil. So shade cloths do not work. It does not deflect. And shade cloths are not a tightly woven material. You may think you're doing your vegetables, even yourselves, giving yourself some protection. You are not. So the UV radiation, again, sucks out the moisture out of the soils and the vegetation, the trees, for example, which contributes to droughts, increasing the wildfire risks, evaporating surface waters. So this is an example when the United Nations says that we are going to be losing half of the world's lakes. They are telling you the truth. I'm going to break off for a moment. So when the water molecule evaporates or leaves surface water, lakes, rivers, streams, it goes up into the atmosphere. That molecule hangs around for about 8 days in the atmosphere as it gets blown around, carried in the jet streams, until it rematerializes into a droplet of water. So you can have a lot of surface evaporation from one part of the planet. All those water molecules go up to the atmosphere, catch a ride in the jet streams, whichever direction. And about 8 days later, it'll rematerialize into a water droplet, flash floods. A little bit of a side note. And it destroys our crops. They know this. This is why they're trying to get us to transition to eating bugs. They know we're going to lose their crops. And personally, I am very, very concerned to the point of worrying that this is going to be the last year we're going to be able to produce any food. Seriously. Let's move on. UV radiation, UV-induced immunosuppression. It suppresses our autoimmune system's functions. It not only promotes the malignant transformation of skin cells, skin cancer, and suppressing the ability of the human immune system to efficiently detect and attack cancerous cells. Are we not having more cases of cancer? In addition to causing immune cell alterations, UV radiation absorption produces molecular changes. UV radiation is known to be directly absorbed by the DNA, not just human DNA, plant DNA. I already showed you the picture of the DNA damaged potatoes I had. I'll see if I can break away on this video. Actually, I'm going to do it right now. One moment. So this was from about 2 or 3 years ago. I was growing some potatoes. I had about 89 plants. 3 different areas. One in the open, no protection. Another area underneath some burlap sack. I thought it would provide some shade. And then also in my polycarbonate covered raised beds. So these are from the burlap sack shade cloth, which did absolutely nothing. So this is a DNA damage of my potatoes. In comparison, these were growing underneath my polycarbonate panels. Now, with the exception of a couple of little nipples there, they did pretty good, very large. So whenever I make a raised bed, everything gets topped off with polycarbonate panels, hinge tops. So actually in the summertime, I do not keep these open. Again, the purpose is to protect them from the ultraviolet radiation. I keep these closed. I have some bottom panels that I will remove for air circulation. So I do not want to expose them to the sun. They'll get enough sun coming through the panels, but not the ultraviolet. Behind the siding, I actually also have 3 inches of rigid foam board insulation, so I can keep on growing into the wintertime. Here's another example. I call this the tunnel. So again, polycarbonate tops. And this is just a view on the inside. This is actually a fence line on the edge of my property and has a slope, so I built this little housing. So again, twin wall polycarbonate panels. When I do my watering, moisture content is maintained in the soil. So if you plan on growing your own food, even a little bit to supplement what you buy, you must take into account in your budgeting polycarbonate panels. Put them over everything. Now, back to our immune system. So again, the damage goes right down into our DNA. Human life forms as well as plant. So regardless of the cell types involved, an important biological consequence of the UV-induced immunosuppression is the loss of immunosurveillance. Remember what I just said. It inhibits the immune system's ability to recognize antigens and cancer cells, and thus it does not respond appropriately. Now, from what I'm about to say, from this point on, I want you to listen very carefully. There is a connection to the Earth's weakening magnetic field. Mr. John Moore, Liberty Man, did a video on this on Brighteon. I'm going to expand on it. There is a connection between Earth's weakening magnetic field and the substance that they created. Before I get into that, UV radiation, in particular UVB range, suppresses the immune system in several ways. UVB inhibits antigen presentation. The immune system does not recognize or detect an antigen. Let me explain to you what an antigen is. First, before I go any further, I've already said this a few times. So I did occupational first aid in the workplace, maintained my certification at the highest level for 28 years because I wanted to help my workers even more. I did the equivalent of pre-med study. I was fascinated by it. So I have a better understanding of how our body works, because it's not all about fractures and lacerations. You know, you can have cardiac events, strokes, whatever. So an antigen is a molecule, a foreign particulate matter, or an allergen. It could be viral, bacteria, it could be a snake bite, it could be dust, it could be anything. Antigens can be proteins, peptides, polysaturates, lipids, or nucleic acids. Normally, when an antigen is introduced into your body, your autoimmune system, if it's functioning properly, will recognize it, will send out the white blood cells to attack it and destroy it normally. Unless, of course, its radar system has been disabled through ultraviolet radiation, for example. Now, the old version of vaccines were the antigen themselves. They used to inject in the dead form the antigen, such as the seasonal flu. So your autoimmune system would recognize it, record it, develop antibodies, and keep them in safekeeping until needed. Completely harmless. So when you used to go get your flu shot, you had what's called an inflammatory response. Remember what I'm going to say. Remember, the shoulder used to be swelling, redness, heat after you got your shot. It's an inflammatory response from introducing an antigen. The mandated substance during the last intentional pestilence release is not the normal vaccine. It doesn't work that way. The created substance which is not supposed to be administered systemically, but it is, adheres itself to the outer membrane of a cell. Take, for example, the myocardium, heart muscle cell. It spikes itself onto it. It sends a message to the nucleus of the cell, instructing the cell to produce an antigen and to send that antigen to the outer surface of the cell. Normally, it should demonstrate like flashing strobe lights and sirens and signalings to say to the autoimmune system, look, here I am, you got to come in and attack me. However, the increased ultraviolet radiation coming in is suppressing our immune system's response to recognize antigens. Remember what I told you after you get your shot? Inflammatory response, swelling, redness, heat. As evidenced by a German pathologist who did the autopsy of a young girl, found the spike protein from the substance, not from the on the surface of her heart. Inflammatory response on the myocardium, not recognized by the autoimmune system. Can you see a possible connection here between the collapse of our protective magnetic field, which allows the cosmic rays in, more of it, to deplete our protective ozone layer, which allows the increased levels of ultraviolet radiation, such as I've been showing you recently. Suppressing our autoimmune system to not recognize the substance which was obviously first created so quickly. They needed a reason to introduce the substance into the population. Therefore, they created the pestilence. And now they're getting ready to create the next, they're calling. And this is why the governments of our world are building these large production facilities to produce the substance. Increased ultraviolet radiation suppresses the immune system's ability to recognize cancer cells and antigens. Are we not having increased cases of cancer? as well as other situations. So that's another reason to make sure we are protected from the UV rays coming in. So in the southern hemisphere, it's your summertime. As the Earth's orbit and tilt changes to the northern hemisphere, summertime, we're going to be getting hit with those increased levels of ultraviolet radiation. We need to do what we can to keep our immune system boosted up. Now, there's a contradiction. We need the sun to synthesize and produce vitamin D. We can do that from sunrise to about 10 a.m. Don't do it in the middle of the day. And again, keep yourself protected, especially your children and your babies. Especially if, unfortunately, you've been pricked. That's just what I think. That's what Mr. John Moore thinks. And he put it all together. So the one thing he did not mention, which I just finished mentioning, was the ultraviolet absorption connection, suppressing our immune system. Therefore, UV radiation becomes more potentially dangerous than cosmic rays. Cosmic ray absorptions has a temporary neurological effects, the headaches, the dizziness, the vertigo, tinnitus. Neuropsychological, perhaps long-term, can even destroy our families, our relationships, our marriages, because we could become irritable and we don't know why, and we're fighting, we're arguing, and we snap, lose self-control. There's the effect on the planet, the earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. But we need to talk a lot more about the ultraviolet radiation. Like I said before, I think this is going to be the last year we're going to be able to produce any food in any quantity. And they know it. I can delve a lot deeper into this subject, sucking the moisture out of everything. So over Canada, specifically northern Canada, for example, I'm watching my battery level. I might lose you. The magnetic field lines are weaker over Canada than a lot of other areas. Therefore, increased levels of radiation come in, sucking the moisture out, causing all our wildfires. So we got the heat coming in from above and from below. We have a hell of a lot of charged particles being absorbed, taken in by our planet, right down to the outer core. And she's getting really overblown, agitated. Think, what have I just said, all right? The substance adheres onto the cell spike, sends a messenger to the nucleus of the cell, instructs the cell to produce an antigen and send it to the surface of the cell. Sudden cardiac failure, transient ischemic attack, a little stroke to full-blown CVAs, big strokes, blood coagulation, etc. That's it for now.